What if the key to building a global career wasn't what you know, but what you're willing to unlearn? Zara shows us that unlearning might just be the most underrated skill of all.
Welcome to She Talks Business. In this episode, we have Zara Basharat, Head of Public Policy Programs and Partnerships at TikTok, where she leads key initiatives in digital safety, education, and sustainability that impact millions of people. With a wealth of experience from global organizations like PepsiCo, Nestlé, the World Bank, and the United Nations, Zara is an expert in forging strategic partnerships and cross-sector alliances to tackle some of the world's most pressing challenges.
What can the platform do? What are the resources that you have? Pick one angle. Want it to be able to compete globally and be considered a global talent. Because sustainability is viewed very differently across different sectors. FMCG sustainability is different. Sustainability and social impact in tech is different. We've always been unafraid to take chances, whether big or small.
What skills do you think are key for somebody who's looking to change? So Zara, I've seen that you've got a major part of your career working for sustainability comms as well. And as a comms professional myself, I wanted to ask you, how has it been working for a segment which is it's very important right now, sustainability, yes, but it's also a very complex one with the way things are in the whole world, and a big responsibility that organizations have on them to act responsibly and to choose responsible ways to do business. How has that experience been for you, and how was comms for sustainability? Was it challenging? What were your learnings?
So it was really interesting because sustainability is viewed very differently across different sectors. FMCG sustainability is different. Sustainability and social impact in tech is different, which is what I'm doing now. And the ethos for me is the same, is to look at the problem. For example, if you want to approach education, whether it's access to education or digital safety or climate change, just be cognizant of where you are, whichever organization you're in, whether it's FMCG or whether it's tech. What can the platform do? What are the resources that you have? Pick one angle and approach it with humility, because education in itself is a really big multi-layered problem. There's access to education, but then how do you approach the problem of education? Are you going to talk about teacher training? Are you going to talk about out-of-school children? What is your angle, right?
Yeah.
So you pick that angle, and then you see, okay, these are the resources that I am. This is the angle that I'm going to take, and also then commit to it, through multi-year interventions. Because when you take on these really big issues, one intervention is not going to make a difference. Right. So you have to commit to that, and then also not change the agenda year on year on year. Okay, this year, for example, this is in fashion, so let's do this. Or next year you should say something else. It has to be multi-year, and you have to be willing to go back to the drawing board over and over again.
Yeah.
Right.
Change and tweak
and also
things.
Your approach to social impact and your approach to sustainability.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe something that was working last year is not working anymore.
Yeah.
We're doing massive scales project in my current job, and something that will work for, let's say, one country is not going to work for another country, right? And the one solution that you had come up with was, it has stopped working now.
Yeah.
Because it's changing. So again, like, what it requires for you is perseverance and looking at the solution and your approach over and over again.
Right.
And you need to be able to do that repeatedly and be comfortable doing that. Because I wish there was a one-fit solution to all of these issues, but it's not.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, again, also, just when I say humility is also about that you may not have a full understanding as an organization and as an individual. So leaning into subject matter experts, right? Because I'm not a climate change expert, and I'm not an expert on education. So who are the people, who are the organizations who are working in that sector, and then leaning on them? Because again, these issues have not been resolved.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that government, nonprofit, private sector, all of us combined are working towards it. We are making headway, but they're not far from being resolved, right? So I think, again, not working in isolation, not working in silo, but working more collaboratively. And again, willing to go back and say, okay, this is not working anymore. What do I need to change?
But it must feel so good working in a domain where you actually see an impact of the work that you're doing. Because I think as a professional, sometimes there comes a point in your life where you want the work that you're doing to actually create an impact or create a ripple or just a little bit of it in the world. Is that something that is important to you because you worked in development sector and then now you're working in more of a public policy domain? So is it something that is, if I may say, most sought out for you?
It really is. It makes me very happy. It's very, it satisfies me. It brings meaning to my work. And I'm not going to say that, it's life changing, but if you can contribute to these solutions, which are absolutely critical for the future of our world and for my children, for our children, and if I'm able to contribute to that in my small way, it's an incredible feeling.
What does it mean? Because you mentioned you're working currently in a role which is to do with public policy. For a normal person, what does public policy mean, and why is it important for organizations and governments to have public policy, and what does it entail?
So public policy as a function is important because you have, it essentially deals with governments, and working with them and understanding on their expectations of you as a sector, as an industry, as an organization, right? And making sure that policies are not made in isolation, policies that will impact the world. And it's important to just sort of have a function that is able to negotiate that and able to steer those conversations, with a very important stakeholder, which is the government. What I do is specific to public policy programs, and I love this role. I think for me this role is the perfect combination of a little bit of government relations, sustainability, social impact, and a lot of storytelling and communications. Because so what I do is that I work with nonprofits, academia, and government in coming up with solutions, again, to issues varying from digital safety to education to employability, which are really issues for, across the METAPSA region. Because our region, if you look at this region, it's obviously very wide, but the population is really young. So although they may have different approaches, but the issues largely are the same. And that's what I do.
And then if you think about it, is there anything that you would say the most challenging that you have had working in public policy? Any particular challenge that you can think of that you would like to share, and maybe how you overcame it?
So I think every day brings a challenge, to be honest. Like, no day is easy. For my role specifically, I have to deal with a lot of stakeholders internally and externally. So just getting, picking your battles, where to give in, where to give people room. And also it can be slow moving. You have an idea, you have an approach, and not everybody is going to come on board at the same time. They will have a difference of opinion. So just being flexible, adaptable, but then again, being firm as to not lose the essence of the impact that you want to achieve, and bringing everybody on board, whether it's internal or external, that is, it's hard, and you have to be very patient, and you have to win people over and over again. And one important role is also lobbying internally. For example, all right, Sanaya, I have this project, and which may require for you to put in extra time, but you have your own work. So why should you do it, right? So how do I align my work with Sania's priorities? And how do I get her excited? And then, how do I kind of just keep that momentum going, keep that enthusiasm going for a project that may be my brainchild, but I want everybody to take ownership for it. And then in the end, obviously, when you see impact, because like I said, if you see the larger impact, then everybody's happy. But journey towards making that happen is not necessarily easy, and people may not see the vision that you have right in the beginning.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, it resonates with me because it feels like it's more of an entrepreneur within an organization, within corporate, because you have to get the job done, like you mentioned, within getting support from internal stakeholders, making sure that your project is, just gets up and that baby is up and running on its legs. How do you measure the success of a public policy program, and how do you see tangible results?
Sure, Sanaya. So I think there are two ways of going about it. That's the approach that I like. Number one, what tech brings you is the breadth of the impact, right? How many people can you reach? For example, we did a massive campaign in Pakistan, and which now we've implemented in Bangladesh and hope to scale across other regions, called Exam Ready, where we made about 500 videos on chemistry, physics, maths, and exam hacks, right? And that we put it on the platform. So again, these are short videos. So have I really prepared Sania for her exam? Not really, right? So what I'm going to do now is that we couple it with giving scholarships. So we've given it about 40,000 scholarships right now in Pakistan and about 11,000 in Bangladesh, where Sania will get access to 3 months of, chemistry, physics, math tutorials, exam hacks, where you have that, again, hour-long sessions on whichever subject that you like, which will really help you prepare for your exam. So I think there are two ways of doing it, right? One is how many people that you reach, but again, how many people are really walking away with that, I wouldn't say life-changing, but an opportunity to do well in life. And then the other thing is, okay, so you've gotten them now ready for their exams. So what's the next step, right? Because you have a lot of young people graduating, but there are not enough job opportunities. So how do you close the loop? So like I said, again, like it never ends, right? Then you have to talk about, okay, what can I do to help young people increase their chances of employability? Is it employability skills? But, I can do that again on the platform, but what is it that, largely that I can do? For example, it's the soft skills that people are missing. Technically people can be really sound, but it's this, how do you present yourself? How do you show up in an interview? Personal branding, which people really struggle with, right? So I have this incredible platform. I can really use that. But then again, how do I also partner with a subject matter expert to really deep dive with young people on these elements? So that's how I view impact. But again, there's not one stop solution, right? Because okay, you've done 500 videos on on these subjects, but what's the next step? So now we've expanded videos on geography and social studies and English grammar. Right? But are you going to keep doing the same thing over and over again? Or are you going to go to the drawing board and reevaluate it?
So it's a constant cycle of reevaluating and seeing what works and improving it from there forwards.
Yeah, and what stopped working? Because things stopped working also. Which, and again, being mindful of what's worked in one country may not work in another country.
The dynamics are different completely. Would you ever think about entrepreneurship at some point?
I have been thinking about it, to be honest. Like I have thought about it. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I love building things. And, not just the ideation stage, which I really enjoy, but seeing things through right till the end is something that really motivates me. So, who knows? I was having tea with my father the other day and he looked at me and he was like, so what are you thinking now? Can you just stay put? And I was like, no, I'm not thinking anything. But the truth is, I'm always looking for, the next big adventure. How can I just implement everything that I've learned across so many years?
That's super important. I think what you're saying is I feel like you're very curious. And I think that curiosity is something that kind of leads on to new adventures and new things and never lets you settle down. That kind of reminds me of my own self, by the way. Zara, I've always looked up to you and I've always noticed your journey on LinkedIn as well. You've got a very diverse background. You've gone from media to development sector to corporate and now corporate tech. So how has this whole trajectory been and what do you think about changing a career? Because they're all very different, by the way. They're all different to each other and no one job is the same. So you took a lot of little risks during your journey. How have you coped up with it?
So, that's a lot of questions within one larger question. But I think, for me, I get bored if I'm doing one thing. And that's the person that I am. So for me, it's really important that I am doing a lot of things, So, I didn't want to be pigeonholed into one thing. For example, communications, I wanted to experience communications, but also sustainability and what does it mean to have social impact and drive social impact and also then, move into a public policy role. And I think it's also important to be mindful of the macro level factors because I started in media, but then quickly into media, I realized that the landscape is changing, right? There were a lot of layoffs. it wasn't the same thing. And that's when I decided, okay, it's better to move into another sector. So from media, I delved into the development sector. And the development sector, again, in Pakistan was also changing rapidly. Although I did work for a big organization like World Bank, but, overarchingly, the funding was drying out. So it's also really important to have some foresight in life on the industry that you're in. How's that changing? Where is it going? What's
Yeah.
the future like? And what are the jobs and skills that will be prevalent and in demand in the future? And, I've also had a lot of guidance from my mentors, which I think is incredibly important, because people who are able to give you advice, help you think things through things from
Yeah.
from a different perspective. And I remember one of my mentors really insisting that, okay, you've done development sector, if you want to be a well-rounded professional, it's important to get some corporate sector experience as well.
Yeah.
And then that's when I moved into corporate sector. I worked at Nestle, and I had my son when I was at Nestle. And I remember like people telling me that, don't quit Nestle now. You've got such a great job. But, my son was really young. He was only, a few months old. And I wanted to just concentrate on him and just come to terms with this new role in my life. And that's when I moved back to the development sector and work for the World Bank. So I think the important thing is that I've always been unafraid to take chances, whether big or small. If you look at my career, I've moved sectors, I've moved cities, and now I've moved countries. So yeah, and the reason why I moved from FMCG to working for telco as well was because if any tech talent was being sourced from Pakistan, it was usually in the telco sector, because Jazz had really positioned itself as a digital operator and being at the helm of tech in Pakistan. And tech was the direction that I was headed. And again, I can't take credit that, I've been very strategic. I've done what I can to steer my career, but I think it's also about being at the right place at the right time, and luck has a very important part to play also.
And just bouncing off from what you were saying right now about changing industries, and how do you see the senior executive roles? Is it easy to transition? Because what we largely see is that sometimes you have to make a few adjustments in order to go into a new industry, and perhaps not focus too much on your growth, which is going up, but rather linear. What do you think about that?
So it's not always easy to transition from one industry to the other. I still remember my first corporate job was at Nestle, and the reason why my back then boss took a chance on me was because he had also worked at the World Bank, right? And he also came from a diverse background. So he was able to see what I was going to bring to the table. So it also varies from person to person. If there was somebody else in his position, he may not or she may not have taken a chance on me. So it's not always easy. It also depends on whether the person sitting across from you is going to have a broader view of things, of the talent that you are and what brings you to the table, or are they going to be very fixated on, he or she doesn't have corporate sector experience, so I'm not going to give her a chance. So again, I'm grateful to him that he was able to open that door up for me, but that doesn't necessarily always happen. So you always, when you are transitioning industries, also very important to look at people who've made that jump like yourself, for example, media to development or development to corporate, because they would understand, and then because somebody has taken a chance on them, they'd be willing to take a chance on you.
Yeah, I think on the contrary, I find it really amusing that when you do that, I think it brings a breath of fresh air into the company, because more than often, we just get confined within our four walls, and, there's the same lingo and the short abbreviations of different things that we've developed as an industry. And, when somebody new comes in, they bring a fresher perspective into the company, into the departments. And I feel like it's a chance that, people should be more often than be more open to take anyways.
I think the main concern is that they're afraid that you will not be adjusted to the culture, because corporate culture is very different from, dev culture, or let's say working for the government is very different to working for a corporate versus media. So the main concern is that you won't be able to adjust and you won't be able to keep up. And as long as you're a person who's willing to learn and unlearn, more importantly, and quickly realize, all right, the things that I was doing in my previous sector, my previous job, were not going to work here. Right? And be willing to learn and adapt. That's the most important thing. And that's why I think they're reluctant to take a chance on people from different industries.
Yeah, yeah. There's a very funny thing that I often say to people that, the term "in my previous workplace." I'm like, we need to stop saying that so often, because unlearn what you've learned from your previous workplace.
That's
This is a new
right.
place,
Yeah.
and everybody does things differently. So Zara, let's talk about change again. You very comfortably mentioned a lot of changes in your life that happened over the course of years, different fields, different milestones in your life, and you make it sound very easy. And I just want to know, how has it been so far with you, and what's the biggest thing that has helped you in during these transitions from various changes that you've had in your life, professionally and personally both?
I've been comfortable with change because I have to give my father credit, because he was in the army. So as a kid, and you would know this,
Yeah.
we've moved around a lot. And I remember being very excited. Okay, what's the new adventure? Where are we going? And I've never been emotionally invested in locations or places. So that has a lot to do with, that's just, who I am. It's just part of my DNA, and just being able to move. So it was easier when earlier on in my career, because, I moved to Karachi as a single woman, and I didn't really have to take into a lot of factors into account, just my, obviously like my parents' blessing, but I was able to move to Karachi. And then when I got married, obviously you have to take into account what your spouse wants to do. What are their ambitions? What kind of life do they want to have? And it's just a very happy coincidence that my husband works remotely. All of his career, he's worked remotely, which gives me a lot of freedom to be able to move. And now we have a son. He's going to be 7 in December. And, I don't know if he's inherited that comfort for change from me. He will have his own opinions on whether, if he'd say, okay, I've gotten a really great opportunity, I want to move, he will have his own opinion.
Yeah.
So I think, that also changes from time to time. So my learning is just do it when there are less variables in place, and you're able to do that when you're younger, when you don't have so many, other factors that you need to account for. So yeah.
That's interesting. And did you always think of yourself having a global career? Was that something that you wanted?
I did want that. I wanted that because I had worked my entire career in Pakistan, and I was beginning to realize, all right, I've pretty much done what needs to be done. I've done dev, I've done media, I've done corporate. So what's the next role? And I wanted to be able to compete globally and be considered a global talent. And again, the opportunity with moving in tech in Dubai just came at the right time, when my husband and I were very ready to move out of Pakistan.
So Zara, talk to me about the different learnings that you've had from different segments that you worked in, and also please shed some light on the global career versus local career, because you've transitioned from Pakistan and now you've moved here. Just some key things, if you can speak.
So I've learned a lot, obviously, across different sectors. My first job in media, I remember, how you would envision a typical newspaper office, which was not very fancy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there were newspapers piled up in the corner, and it was, it was an okay office, but I was given a lot of freedom to do, what I wanted to do. So I think that's also made me into a person that doesn't really care about, how fancy the office is, or how big the organization is, how small it is, as long as I'm able to do the work that I do and I'm giving freedom, that's really important to me. In development sector, I did a lot of, again, like going through dense research reports, right, on taxation and how do you make it palatable for the larger audience. So that was a very important skill to have. Why should somebody care about tax policy?
Yeah.
Right. Why should somebody care about energy reform? What it means to a common person. I'm sure as a comms person, you've done
Yeah.
a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
And I've also learned on, sometimes people can be dismissive of you. You show up and they don't know what you're going to bring to the table, so they're not going to take you seriously. But again, how not to let that get to you and just keep on doing the good work that you're doing. And then, at Nestle, because it was such a seasoned and such a big organization, I learned systems and processes. And at PepsiCo, that job really pushed me to the core in terms of expectations and just being on top of things. So again, you learn, and then I think now I'm at a point where I can just fit into anywhere. whether it's a big organization with systems and processes or whether it's free flowing, because, tech can be also pretty, free flowing as well. There are a lot of changes, your role can change overnight, and that's true for tech anywhere. So are you going to be comfortable with that or not? But you don't have a choice. Right.
Yeah.
So again, now I feel like I'm a chameleon. You can just put me anywhere and I'll find a way to thrive.
That's amazing. And then transitioning from a career in Pakistan to settling now in the UAE, what skills do you think are key for somebody who's looking to change?
From my perspective, because I had worked with a lot of FMCGs, I had, worked for the World Bank, I had worked with global talent and not just local talent. So I think that way my mentors and my previous bosses and my previous organizations really had honed me into the professional that I am today to be able to make the transition from local to global. And again, I was very fortunate because, the tech opportunity that I have now, they approached me directly when I was in Pakistan. I also feel that if you are in an FMCG, then that organization often create that routes for you. Right, you can have global roles, and you can move out of the local market no matter where you are. But again, it depends on how comfortable you are. People can get really fixated with, oh, I just want to stay in this city, and for example, like you'll say, Islamabad is so beautiful, I don't want to go to Karachi. Karachi is so chaotic. But just think of your career from a long-term perspective, on what you want to do. If you're going to be fixated on not changing your environment and not taking those chances while you can, it's going to become harder and harder, and you're going to get pigeonholed into this person can only do this. So again, it depends on you, right? So to be able to, and then I think you do it enough times, because I've done it so many times now, it's just comfortable for me. But that would be my sincere advice.
So Zara, talk to me about somebody in your life that has played a pivotal role in being where you are today, apart from yourself, because all credit goes to you, and I would very happily say that. It's been lovely hearing you. But is there any person that you look up to, or any personality, somebody that you know or you look up to who's played an instrumental role?
Not really. I have learned a lot from the people that I work with and, my family and friends. And I'm genuinely interested and curious about people. So, I would, for example, in our interaction, I've learned something and I'll take it away. So I would say that I'm the amalgamation of everything that I've learned, and just being very fortunate to be surrounded by incredible professionals and people both in my personal and professional life. And I've just really held on to, the advice that people have given me. Again, whether they're people that I work with or not. But I do believe, and this is something that I really hold on to, is that you should have your own standards of excellence. What does success mean to you should not be defined by anyone, be it a mentor or be a boss or anybody that you work with.
Yeah.
Right. And you should be driven, that drive should come from within yourself. And then you pick and choose on what you want to take away. But you should get to a point where you don't need external validation on, oh, you're doing great or you're not doing great. And I think that's also very important when people give you feedback. And one of my important learning is that when somebody is giving you feedback, don't get fixated so much on the tone. They're not going to give you feedback in the way that is going to be very, it's not always ideal, right? It could be harsh, it could be the delivery might not be perfect, but don't get fixated on those things. Just try to understand what they're trying to tell you and what you need to improve. But just step away from, if you think the feedback is too harsh, because that doesn't define you, right? So don't let what you see criticism, don't let it break your spirit. Because you will see a lot of that in your career, especially as you move up the ladder, because the expectations are really high, the pressure is going to be enormous. So don't let that define you. For example, your XYZ or whatever. Just think about what they're trying to tell you. What is that one thing that you need to improve? And the other thing at the same time is don't let a compliment get to your head, right? Be gracious about it. Take it that yes, thank you. but don't let it get to your head. People's opinions don't really matter so much because people are also fickle. In the morning they'll see you in one way, by afternoon they'll see you somewhere else. And again, like the more senior people that you interact with, CEOs, whatever, you have to understand they're all people with the same insecurities, with issues. And again, they're human, right? So it's best not to put anyone on a pedestal and not to put yourself on a pedestal. And that's why even people, you can have respect for people. I have a lot of respect for my mentors. I have a lot of respect for, people that I work with. But again, then you're in a position to think about what they're saying to you objectively because they have their own biases. They have their own experiences, right? So again, it boils down to how well you know yourself. And again, the drive needs to come from within. The drive for excellence has to be the standards that you have for yourself, not what other people have to say about you.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And how have you navigated that in your personal and professional life? Are you the sort of person who's reading books or has, like you mentioned, I think how I see you is mostly, maybe you mentioned you've learned from others and experiences firsthand. But what has been kind of like the learning curve for you for these experiences?
So I've invested a lot in things other than just learning on the job. Like I just finished my MBA. I graduated from London Business School in July with an executive MBA. So, I do believe in that there's only so much that you can learn at the job. You need to invest in really tangible skills because I wanted to be seen as somebody who understands business, who understands numbers. Because if you look at communications or sustainability, social impact or public policy, the sort of the reputation around it is changing. Now they're getting closer and closer to the business. For the longest time, they were a side function, right? And I want to be taken seriously as somebody who understands and has the acumen, which I always did inherently. But you need that degree also, or you need that experience also from such an incredible institute as London Business School to help you realize the thing that you haven't learned and really to deep dive into those subjects. So I think that's also really important. So whenever I've gotten a chance, I've signed up for a degree, I've signed up for a course, because again, the people that you're working with also are, sometimes it can be very inward looking that they're so fixated on the task at hand. So there's only so much outside perspective that they can bring you. And I like to be a step ahead of the game. Right?
Yeah.
On what the future is. What is the future of work? What do I need to do, or what the kind of professional that I need to be able to adjust to the future easily. Again, there's no guarantee, but I promise you I'm going to do the best that I can to be, ahead of the game.
Yeah, that was my next question, Zara. That what importance do you think a higher degree places, like an MBA or a master's degree in a corporate career in this day and age when we see there's so much noise around? It's not really needed and it's more to do with the skills. So how do you see it?
Well, it depends on how you see it. Again, there's no guarantee. It's about what you want and what you think is needed. Like I said, I wanted to be seen as somebody and manage the optics. You talked about personal branding, but having the branding that, I have an MBA from London Business School, which means I understand finance, which means I'm comfortable with numbers. Because without the degree, if I say to you, Sanya, like I'm comfortable with numbers, but all my core skill that is sustainability, communications, and public policy, you'd be like, I don't know, Zara. I'm not sure. But when I show up with a London Business School, MBA, then you're like, oh yes, I can definitely, she has not done a hardcore business role before, but I can take a chance on this person as well. So that's what I wanted. Again, there is no guarantee in life, right?
Yeah.
But you do what you can, given the foresight that you have and what you want from life, and then you take it from there. Of course, does this guarantee that I'm going to be CEO? Does it guarantee? It doesn't. There's no silver bullet. So to say. So again, like it depends on what your reasoning is on doing it. This was my reasoning. And what the network also gives you is a very deep understanding of the world. Because as we get closer and closer together, and I had again moved from Pakistan into this role across this massive region, is just to work with people better. And what it also taught me is to have heated conversations with people about, that you can have disagreements, but again, walking away with respect, and not letting it affect your relationship with the other person, which is incredibly important because you will find people who will disagree with you on things that you might really believe in. And that's all right. And I think as we again go into, for yourself or for other people, go into roles that are global, that skill becomes more and more important. And also being culturally sensitive
Yeah.
as well. And that everybody has story, everybody has history, and just be mindful of that what you're saying can be interpreted differently.
Yeah.
And it's not personal. It's just that they've lived a very different life from yours. And that deep understanding will really help, I think, everyone not just work better, but get along better
Yeah.
as societies.
And that comes as well, I think it stems from, I think, having a degree when you interact with even more people. So you kind of like
Exactly.
broaden your horizon even further. And those experiences would help you, again, like you mentioned, be more empathetic with other cultures, other people, and not confining yourself within the four walls, which often sometimes, incorporates long-term employees. That's kind of like one problem that I see.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that fresh perspective that you can have an outside input
and also
into
like
it.
reading about the history. Like I've
Yeah.
never been really interested in the history of the region, but now because of this role, but also the the people that I've met. I've never had Emirati friends before. I had no exposure to that. I had never met Saudis before, but through LBS, I've met all of these incredible people across like so many different parts of the world, which makes me even more interested in a better understanding of the region. So it helps me at work, but it also helps me, in building closer relationships in my personal life.
That's brilliant. Zara, it's been such an honor to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for giving us your time and for taking us through your journey. It's been a whole lot of information and a whole lot of knowledge for me as well. And also the people in the team, because just to let everybody know, we've got a whole entire team of Emirates Podcast Studio, and we've got some amazing people who've been listening and tuning in with us. So our first-hand audience, and everybody's been really, really benefiting from this really candid talk that we had with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sanaya. The honor is mine. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to you, and thank you to the incredible team for having me today.
If you found this episode interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.